Alrighty, well, hey, how's it going, anybody? Tuning into this video here. I am super excited and honored to hang out and chat with my good friend, and we were bantering about just a moment before. I'm awful at getting your name right, and forgive me. He told me, hey, just call me John, because that's easy enough. So
Yeah,
how's it going, John? Also, Jean and John Maes, I think. I'm close,
yeah,
hopefully.
yeah. You are. Yeah, it's going very well, John. So it's funny. We're both referring to ourselves with the same name. Yeah, no, it's totally awesome that I can hang out with you. We did this before when I did like the podcasting a few months back, but yeah, it's always nice to hear from you again because I'm a big fan of your videos, man.
Well, I'm very flattered, and thank you for making some time to hang out. I know you're a busy dude. Can you tell me, what have you been up to lately? You had the podcast some time ago. Was that
Yeah,
with a different gig, the same gig you're with now, something on the
no, it
side?
was a different gig. Yeah.
Tell me all about
So
it.
so when I left college with my bachelor's degree in computer science, I was basically lost because I had to get that degree from my parents. I never wanted to become this, to be honest.
Mm,
My professional goal and professional aspirations was to be a professional video gamer. But my parents were like, yeah, no, that's not a career. You're not gonna do that. You have to go to school. You have to go to college, get a real degree. So I was kind of forced to do that. And I did it. I mean, I passed, got my degree, but then I was like, now what? I don't really know what to do. There wasn't anything like hacking or infosec really in the things that I learned at school.
right.
So that was all kind of new to me. And when I left school, I basically almost immediately got swept up by a service provider called Dimension Data, which is now Entity Global. They're kind of big. They're a service provider across the world, and I got outsourced through them to the Belgian government as a system engineer.
Hmm.
So I did that for about a year and a half, and I got really bored because yeah, you get like layer one. It's just like the start of your infosec career,
Yeah.
not just infosec, like IT career. You get hired as a junior, you get like tier one tickets, and it's just like, oh, I can turn my computer on. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Oh yeah, it works. Like stupid stuff like that, and it got really tedious. But you did see a lot of repetitiveness coming in, so a lot of people were experiencing the same issues. So I started automating part of my job, and it went all the way to like about 60 or 70% of my job being fully automated. So then I had a lot of time, and I was like, okay, I can do two things. Either I'm just fine where I am, watch video games, watch movies, make money, do let the automation do their thing, or I could spend my time more useful and start learning about other stuff. It just happened to be that Dimension Data had a like get together every year where all the services came together for a company day, and they started talking to each other. And one of the services that Dimension Data also has was penetration testing, but it was a very small team. It's not their core business, but they did a demo about Metasploit. So they showed me how to launch a Meterpreter shell. And like when that happened, it was like, whoa, what the
Yeah,
hell? Yeah, totally revelation, totally mind blowing. And I got interested in that. So I started studying up while I was half out of a job because I automated it. And then I transitioned into Infosec because that's what I wanted to do. So I started applying to several companies here in Belgium, but Belgium is a relatively small country, so there's not really a lot of players
Hmm.
catering to the cybersecurity world. And one of the biggest firms in Belgium is actually called Enviso, which is
Yeah.
they're specializing in cybersecurity. You use a lot of DDA Stevens tools. So yeah, that was a colleague of mine as well. But then on the blue side of things, because they do everything infosec related, so blue, red, purple, they do everything. And yeah, that is how I started. I started doing web application pen testing because the market just asks web application pen testing. And then I transitioned into internal network penetration testing. And then as our client base started to mature along with us, because Inviso isn't really that old, yeah, questions started coming in for red team gigs. And we didn't have that. We didn't have a red team. So I started working with the business manager that was doing the internal penetration testing. That was leading that team. And we came to an understanding where I was going to lead the red teams for a technical side, and he was going to lead the red teams from a business side. So I didn't have to worry about sales and all that stuff. I could just focus on the technical side of things, which is what I like most. And yeah, that's how I transitioned into managing a red team, which is kind of crazy, especially when you consider that I've only been doing this for about 4.5 years now. But when I started leading my red team was about 2 years in. So 2 years into Infosec and already leading red teams, which was quite nice, but it was kind of a journey, right? Because not a lot of procedures and not a lot of knowledge was in-house. So we had to train, we had to gather all that knowledge, build our internal knowledge base, start learning about these things called TTPs, which we had never heard about,
right?
Start learning about MITRE ATT&CK, all that good stuff. But yeah, we managed. It was all nice. And then I started doing the podcast as well, because I like talking with people. And yeah, I got you as one of the first guests, actually. And Dave Kennedy as well, which is the CEO of TrustedSec. And I already knew Dave before that through social media. He's like one of my favorite persons, much like you. He's like one of the most selfless persons in the whole world. He's always trying to do right by his people, even like go on the news, talk about InfoSec. He's really a straight, nice guy. And he was like, hey, I've seen some tools of you on GitHub. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're on our radar. Do you want to start working for TrustedSec? I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, definitely. Yeah. That was super awesome. So I got picked up by TrustedSec. While that was going on, I was also starting to get a foothold into SANS, which is like a training provider of all things InfoSec, because of my background in red teaming, and because Eric van Buggenhout, which is the one of the bosses of Inviso, is also a well-established SANS instructor and author. So he kind of got me into the whole SANS shenanigans as well. So I started teaching his course, which is the purple teaming course. And then I started writing a red teaming course as well, because SANS didn't have that yet. So I started co-writing that with a colleague, well, not a colleague, a friend of mine called Barry Darnell. And it's supposed to hit the market by summer. So that's going to be awesome. Yeah. It's going to be SANS' first 6-day course. Yeah. And that's where I'm at right now, I think. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And then what happened recently is that Joe Vest announced that he was going to leave HelpSystems for AWS, because he actually came from AWS. Then he joined HelpSystems. Now he's going back to AWS. And out of the blue, because I really didn't know Joe that well. I mean, we talked a little bit because he was doing Cobalt Strike stuff. Obviously, in our red teams, we were using Cobalt Strike as well. So it was a bit of back and forth where I published some buffs and did some community work for him as well. And suddenly, out of the blue, before he even announced that he was going to leave, he sent me a message on Twitter and was like, hey, what's up? I'm like, hey, long time no see. Like, yeah, I want to talk to you about something. Do you have a minute or two? I'm like, yeah, sure. Well, what's going on? Yeah, I'm going to leave HelpSystems for AWS. And we were wondering if you wanted to take my place as technical director of Cobalt Strike. And when he tweeted, so it was really funny. So I had my coffee and I had my mobile phone. Yeah. I wasn't even on my computer yet. And it was like messaging me that. And I was just like frozen. It's like, Jean.exe stopped working. My girlfriend was like, hey, what's going on? Why are you seemingly shocked? I'm like, yeah, this guy just sends me that he wants me to take his place as a technical director. And she was like, what does that even mean? I'm like, yeah. So I started telling her she's a complete InfoSec like newbie. She doesn't know anything about what we really do. So I started talking to her about things like command and control frameworks and Cobalt Strike. And I think she lost me like halfway, but she knew that I was very excited about this. And I told Joe, yeah, if you're really like serious about this, then yeah, sure. I definitely want to have a chat. I want to explore that further. But then things died down a little bit. Started doing my job at TrustedSec. And then after, I think, a week or two, they got back to me and they were like, yeah, are you still interested? I'm like, yeah, sure. Want to hop on a call with us? They were like, yeah, okay. So I hopped on a call with them. It went really well. There was an immediate click. And yeah, I'm going to start that gig as well. Half May is going to be my join date, and I'll start working on Cobalt Strike and trying to get it back into, well, the new generation, because it's 10 years old, which is insane. Like, Cobalt Strike is 10 years old.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy but it's still like almost the most used command and control framework out there. So I'm really hoping to make some significant changes, because it kind of shows that it's 10 years old in terms of like GUI and stuff. It's kind of outdated to some of the competitors that are coming out. So I'm hoping to have an impact. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm really excited about that.
Holy crap, man. Like, yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been really wild, but I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Well, hey, congratulations. I think that's going to be a phenomenal fit for you, and I know you're going to crush it. That was awesome. It's super cool to see like your whole trajectory. And there's so much to unpack there. In all reality, like, I thought it was really interesting, because I have not heard the perspective that said, like, look, I didn't really want to do computer stuff. I just wanted to hang out and play games. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's awesome. I still play a little bit of a Call of Duty here and then. I'm normally on Super Smash Brothers, but
yeah. So the joke is that with everything that has come my way, I don't even have time to play any video games anymore.
Yep.
So it's like completely dead to me. I do have like a super giant gaming rig, but it's like, yeah, no time to play. But hey, my parents got it right. I mean, I probably wouldn't have gone that amount of length in a professional gaming career, even though I was decent at it. I never would have made that career move work in hindsight.
Yeah. It's always interesting to see, like, hey, that parent kind of oversight, like, hey, you should go do this, or this maybe thing is not maybe potential, etc. I don't know, but it's awesome you ended up where you ended up. As you mentioned, yeah, I'm a good fan of some of the folks over at Adviso. They always had some super cool stuff. And over to the point where you started to pour into Sans, I think that's fantastic. Like, so I had known Barry Darnell, or Pwn EIP, as he's over around on the Twitterverse and the interwebs, for a little bit of time when I was helping teach with some of my previous gigs, and was also with Sans. But fantastic fella, and I know you two put together would make a fantastic course. And I know, hey, this thing is going to hit the streets super duper soon. Can you, if it's totally kosher, could you give me like a high level, like, hey, what is it cover? As long as that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, it is definitely. So George Ochies, which is another Sans instructor,
he's over from Scythe, is that right?
Yeah. That's right. He launched a course about 2 years ago called Sans 564, which is a 2-day red team bootcamp. But given the nature of Sans, 6-day courses always tend to do better than 2-day courses. That's just the inherent nature of the Sans business model.
Right. And
George did put a significant amount of effort into that 2-day course, and it's really good. But George was kind of, this course isn't really what I was expecting it to be in terms of sheer sales numbers. And he was like, starting to look for collaborators to expand the course, give it a little bit more beef, to make it into a full-fledged 6-day course. And Barrett Darnell answered his call. That was even before I got into teaching Sans, so it's already been in the works for a bit. So Barrett answered that call. He kind of got the 2-day course from George, and he started expanding upon that. But Barrett is a really good guy, really technical, really smart, but he's more of a Linux kind of guy.
Yes.
So he knows everything that there is to, like, all the nitty-gritty Linux kind of stuff, but he's not that good in Windows. He knows his way around, but he's not as technically skilled in Windows environments as he would be in Linux environments, because that's really his strong point. And because of, well, having seen me around and knowing that I do lead red teams, which are primarily Windows Active Directory based, he reached out to me and he said, look, I have Unix experience, you have Windows experience. Why don't we collaborate together and create like a 6-day red team course? Like, that's awesome. Definitely, I'm down for that. So the 6-day course is going to be everything that you have to know about red teaming. It is an intro course, so it's a 5-level course. It's not like an advanced course, so you're not going to see how to build your own implants or kind of stuff like that. But you're going to learn how to use several command and control frameworks. The two that we're covering in the first release of the 565 is going to be Covenant and Empire.
Awesome.
But we are going to expand on that with Cobalt Strike as well in the future. So everything from project management, how do you approach your red team? How do you scope it? How do you connect with the clients, determine the crown objective, crown jewels, everything like that, to executing and then to reporting. So we're going to teach you how to set up infrastructure, how to use redirectors, how to not open stagers to the internet so everyone can pull it. Stuff like that, basic OPSEC considerations. Then we're going to teach you everything about Active Directory, how to enumerate it. There's like a full day, I kid you not, a full day of Active Directory enumeration because it's just that important. Yeah. I mean, enumerating is the number one weapon of a red teamer, I would say. So everything about enumeration, then we're going to talk about actionable objectives. So how can you laterally move? How can you privilege escalate from within those command and control channels? Because obviously it's different when you have like hands-on RDP access to command and control. There's some things that you have to take into consideration. Then how to exfiltrate data in a covert way. So it's not you pulling like 10 terabytes of data all at the same time. And then, yeah, how to close things, right? How to present your findings to the client. So it's the full life cycle of a red team that we kind of squished into 6 days. Yeah.
That's super cool. I love hearing a little bit of the sneak peek. I'm super glad you're showcasing Empire and Covenant. Empire is kind of one that I've played with a little bit more. I know Covenant, I think, has had a couple hiccups and speed bumps here and there when people compare and contrast it to a couple others. Hey, Cobalt Strike is obviously a great thing. Have you done much work with Mythic?
No, I haven't. But it just happens to be that I talked about the course with some of my colleagues at TrustedSec as well. And they were like, you should have swapped Covenant with Mythic because
Mythic is the cool kid on the block, I think.
It's the cool kid on the block, yeah, for sure. But that's the kind of thing, you know, you have the C2 matrix. Every month there's like 10 new command and control channels popping up on the radar. So it's really hard to make that decision. And because we also, in SANS, you kind of want to have some kind of continuity amongst courses. And there are already some courses leveraging Empire and Covenant. So we were like, okay, if we want to have like a natural transition into other courses after students have taken our course, kind of makes sense to stick to the same frameworks that are already well established into other SANS courses as well. So we stuck with them, but that doesn't mean that we can't swap them out down the line. I mean, courses do get updated because Infosec moves very rapidly.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes with the two frameworks that we currently have. And if something new pops up or something is better than the other, we might swap it out in time. Who knows?
Well, I mean, hey, having the blend of the technical work as well as the like managerial and process and pipeline for the whole life cycle, as you mentioned, is definitely going to be invaluable. So I, for one, am looking forward to that, and I hope I can take it when the time comes.
Yeah. I think it's also one of the, if not the first course in red teaming where so it's taught in person. That's already one thing. There are courses like Pentester Academy and Rasta Maes obviously have their courses as well, which are very awesome. I'm a big fan of Rasta. I'm a big fan of Pentester Academy. I've done all their certifications, but they're not taught in person, right? There's no real instructor interaction. So I think that's going to be one of the main strengths that SANS has over the other courses there. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
SANS has always been without a doubt a notch above the rest. But there are also things to consider, right? Especially the price tag. So
the price points, yeah, for
understandably so. Well, hey, getting you and Barry together is going to be incredible. I met Barrett Darnell, probably besides Charm, over in the Maryland area here in the U.S.
Yeah.
How in 2019, maybe? Kicked around at DEF CON, hung out, ran into a Black Hat the other year, spent some time teaching. So definitely a great friend. And again, just the same with you. I think he was at Bishop Fox for some time and is now over at Intuit to do more red teamy stuff. But he is in the mix. And man, I gotta get some time to chat and record and hang out with him.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. He would probably love to do that with you.
Can I ask one thing that you mentioned, and I actually just kind of want to sneak this in as a quick aside, and then want to probably pick your brain about TrustedSec a bit more, and then on to HelpSystems. But I really like that you mentioned, like, look, I got thrown into this red team lead position, and now I'm going to be taking over a technical director gig within 4 years, 5 years, maybe 2 from where things work in the pipeline. Which I love. And it's a weird thing to talk about, I know, because it's like, dude, I'm like a 26-year-old kiddo. WTF? Why are people paying me the big bucks all of a sudden? So if I could, words to wisdom for folks listening in, like, look, if you show, dude, your hardcore competency, extreme skill set, your passion and drive, and how hard you're willing to go with this thing, then that absolutely 1,000% pays off. And I'm glad, John, I think in my mind, you're a shining example of that. And I hope that's okay to say.
Oh yeah. I'll take the compliment. I still have a major imposter syndrome, but I mean,
my first gig was being a teacher right out of the gates of college. And I'm like, well, that's such a weird thing. Okay. I should not have a senior-esque quote unquote role when I just, hey, I got my scratch and sniff sticker that said I suffered for 4 years at school. And then, hey, you take over a lead position. That's awesome. That's great. Because, hey, you showed the competency and you showed the skill set all along the way. And now you can just get into that.
Yeah. And I think that teaching, no matter in what shape or form, be it through YouTube as a content creator or through a professional organization, it really helps you. It helps you as well. And it's something you actually told me as well when we were doing the podcast together, when the roles were reversed. And you said, look, I started doing this YouTube thing, but it was more for myself than for an audience because I wanted to learn how things work. And if you're kind of forced to explain a technical concept to someone else, you're kind of forced to know what you're talking about because otherwise it just doesn't work that way. So I think teaching definitely helps to understand and force yourself to dig just that little bit deeper to fully grasp a concept.
Absolutely. Awesome. What have you been up to with TrustedSec then? Dave Kennedy, again, as you mentioned, champion of the whole InfoSec scene in my mind. I think I was able to have an interview and chat with him even when I was like a nobody. Probably stuck around
he's awesome.
10,000 subscribers or something over on YouTube. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm happy to chat with you. But incredible fellow. Yeah, what have you been up to there?
Well, because it's kind of hard for me to balance SANS and TrustedSec because SANS engagements are a week typically from Monday to Saturday. So it's actually 6 days always. And it's kind of hard to balance that out with red team gigs because red team gigs typically, because of the nature of a red team, are longer than an internal pen test. So probably about 3 to 4 weeks. But if I teach SANS every month or every 2 months, it's hard to be fully involved into full-fledged red team engagements. So what I'm doing at TrustedSec right now is primarily internal pen tests, which is fine. It's a nice change of pace. It's awesome, to be honest, to just sit back and run some NTLM relay, for example, like get that ESC1 or ESC8 and get domain admin. So I've been doing that for about half a year now, I think, primarily internals, but yeah, I'm definitely around. We're all a big family at TrustedSec, so sometimes it happens that one of the red team operators has a question and just pops it in the chat and comes in and chat with me, and we start hacking away together in one of the red team ops. So yeah, I'm basically more of a supporting role, to be honest, right now at TrustedSec, which is fine. I did the red team lead thing for a while, did the internal pen testing thing for a while. So I'm good, man. It doesn't really matter where I'm at, as long as I'm happy, as long as my employer is happy as well. And it happens to be the case. So yeah, I'm fine no matter what. The thing I'm looking for most in a job is more of the team spirit, especially now that COVID hit and you're kind of forced to work from home. It's important to have someone to talk to, even if it's virtually. Just like, for example, hang out with you right now. It's so important to keep those social channels open, because otherwise you get isolated, and a burnout and a depression are always things to look out for, especially when you start combining multiple jobs and starting to work 16 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day. So yeah, it's very important to have a nice attitude no matter where you work. And yeah, if it's technically challenging, that's awesome. If it's not, then that's awesome too. I mean, everyone has their own path to walk, right? Nobody is the same. Some people are fine in the jobs that they currently are. Some people want to learn more. So even though I'm now doing more of an internal pen test kind of thing, I published a few blog posts. So I'm still doing the research. If I see something interesting popping up, I'm gonna take a look. My red team brain is still with me, even if I'm doing internals and I see like a weird web application or a weird fat client or thin client. I'm always going to start looking into how these things work and see if they are secure. So even if I'm doing more tedious work as an internal pen test, you're still going to find cool stuff, man. It doesn't matter. You're still going to find something cool.
Agreed. Yeah, as long as you're in it, as long as you're with it, that's really where it's at. So
yeah, that's it.
I had a couple other things that I would like to kind of pick your brain on, because I'd love to chat a little bit about either the other stuff that you're learning still, or hey, the meat and potatoes of like what you're doing, and how did you get truthfully into the stuff that you got into. I know, hey, we kind of got a high level stuff, but in my mind, you have, I think, what a position and a role and like a significant strength in what a lot of people want to get into. Like, people want to be a pen tester. People want to be a red teamer.
Yeah.
At a tactical point of view, can I ask, like, what would be your advice to those people? What is it that they should learn? You mentioned Active Directory. You dropped an NTM relay here and there. You're talking about C2 servers and command and control frameworks. What else is there, my man?
Yeah. So again, my path is a bit of an unconventional one, because I was kind of forced to pick up the pieces, kind of, which is fine. I love it. I love the challenge. I'm kind of the person that never backs down for a challenge, even if I know that I'm like grossly incompetent. I'm still going to give it like my best shot and hope for the best. So what I did was, when I started at Inviso and I didn't have any, like zero pen testing experience at all, what I started doing was things like watching you. That was one of the first things. Watching IPSec as well. Yeah, he's awesome as well. And just started hacking around with free platforms. You got, back then, Hack the Box was relatively new. I had trouble doing the first challenge to get in back then. But there were things like VulnHub, which were, I don't know if it's still around, but I think so. So that was a website where you can download virtual machines, much like Hack the Box, but you download it, so you have it with you instead of Hack the Box having it somewhere in the cloud magically for you available. You had to download the VM, and you had to start messing around with exploits, basically. So that's what I started doing. Started learning about Nmap, because that was the first thing that people kind of have to know. That's how to enumerate ports, how to know which services are running on which ports. And the more you start doing that, you start to learn ports as well, right? Like, we all know that port 80 is HTTP, 443 is HTTPS, but you start learning these things. It's like repetition and muscle memory. And yeah, then you start seeing these common misconfigurations and those common things that could go wrong, like cross-site scripting, like server-side request forgery, stuff like that. And I picked it up. I started learning that slowly. I'm not the best student, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, and it helps when you know people in the industry. So when I joined Inviso, I was surrounded by people that knew what they were doing. So when you start shadowing people like that, you pick up a lot, right? You start learning a lot of things just by seeing other people hands-on doing their hacking mumbo jumbo magic. You start learning from that. And you start developing your own methodology as well, because you have things like the OWASP testing guides and stuff like that. But as you do it, as you progress, you start developing kind of your own methodology, right? You start getting that intuition. You start to know where you have to look. And that's things that you just get by sheer experience. There's like a famous quote saying that you have to do something 10,000 hours to be an expert at it. Like repetition really helps. And that's how I started learning about web, because web was something that I didn't know anything about at that point. And then when internal pen tests started to become more and more of the norm for me, I learned from my lead, my direct lead, my boss back then, which was Jonas Bouters. He's a really awesome dude as well. We still troll around. He's a famous, like we're trolling each other, basically. That's our relationship. And he taught me about researching, doing things like reading blog posts. He linked me to the NTLM relay blog post of Whitebleeder, Marcello, back in 2017. And that worked, man. That stuff worked back then.
Still works.
And it still works. So learning how authentication works, learning how NTLM works, learning how Kerberos works. And to this day, I still don't fully understand how Kerberos works, because every time you think, you know Kerberos, someone publishes new research and it's like, this is not supposed to work. Like, that's not how Kerberos works, but somehow it does. So you have to start learning Kerberos all over again. And yeah, it's fun, but it also takes practice. It takes dedication. And I wrote a blog post, I think 4 years ago or 3 years ago now, where I was like, so you want to be a pen tester and or red teamer? It's one of the most read blog posts that I had on my site. And one of the things I wrote was, if you want to become a pen tester or a hacker just to hack your ex-girlfriend's Facebook accounts, you're probably in it for the wrong reasons. And you're probably also never going to achieve that goal, because if it was that easy to hack Facebook, then everyone would do it and Facebook would not be $1 billion business. So if you're into it for the wrong reasons, you're going to start hitting walls very, very, very fast. You're going to drop off. But if you're in it because you are much like us and you want to learn how things work, if you're really interested in like internals, you want to know how something works, then you're going to succeed in this no matter what. But you have to push through. When things get hard, you don't give up. OffSec has this kind of thing, like the try harder mentality. And some people say it's kind of toxic and stuff like that, but it does carry some weight to it though, in the sense that when things get hard, either you soldier on through and you find success, or you drop off like maybe 80% of the other people, and that's about it. You're not going to succeed in this industry, because let's face it, you and me both know this, especially in Infosec. It's a very much a moving target. So you're never going to have 100% coverage. Like, it's impossible. You'll never know everything. And even the areas that you know are going to change in like 3 or 4 years. I mean, Windows anno 2000 is not Windows anno 2022, right? So in this branch, in this industry, you're always going to be forced to study. You're always going to be forced to challenge yourself, because the moment you stop learning new things is the moment you will start becoming obsolete. And it's harsh to say, but it's true.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh man, I think about that one a lot because I always we danced around just momentarily the idea of that imposter syndrome or a little bit of that burnout when we're juggling like 2-3 jobs, working remote, blah blah blah. But there is a real amount of tough love, and especially in your blog post when you had said like, look, if you aren't coming into this with the right head, quit. Like it's not going to work. You're better off just effing quit.
Yeah, it's true, because you're gonna waste so much time trying to understand concepts, and if you're not pushing through that, if you're not willing to expand your mind around that, because especially when it comes down to low level kind of stuff, and that's where you make the big bucks. That is, if you're really specializing in something niche and something really low level, that's not something that is easy, man. I mean, not to toot our own horns or anything like that, but Windows or Linux or Mac, it doesn't matter which operating system, has been built by several engineers with years of coding experience. And you coming in as a fresh green guy who doesn't know how to write C or C++ and start trying to dissect that stuff, it's not easy. You're going to cry internally a lot.
Let me add the disclaimer and the big asterisk and footnote here. Like, look, this is not us saying this for people listening in. This is not a gatekeeper. I don't mean this to be, oh, we're being gatekeepers by any, literally not at all. No, it's just when you look out onto the horizon, that's what you see. It's just the worldview. It is a certain amount of reality, and that, man, it takes some long nights and some studying, and if you don't keep up with it, as you mentioned, you fade.
On that note, though, because you mentioned gatekeeping, the Infosec community, in my opinion, is probably one of the most helpful communities out there, as long as you're straight up and you're not trying to sell a bag of chips, which is like 80% air and 20% chips. Because there's some commotion. I'm not going to name any names, but if you're into the whole Twitter Infosec debate, there have been some charlatans lately, crying wolf, but they fall through. they get exposed very fast by smart people. So as long as you're straight up and you're not trying to be a know-it-all, you're not proclaiming to be an expert at anything, and you're just actively looking for guidance, where like I had zero toxic interactions with anyone in the Infosec community, as long as you're open about it and you're just like, hey, you're a leading expert in XYZ. I don't really know anything about that yet, but I'm willing to learn. Could you point me in the right direction? Like, no one is going to give you any issues, right? They're going to point you in the direction to go, and they'll be open for you. And that's the strength, in my opinion, of the Infosec community, because I have never seen any other job like this where people are that open with research, both blue and red, publishing GitHub tools, publishing Java rules to detect those GitHub tools. It's crazy how much research there is that is published for free. And in my opinion, if without going into the whole OST debates, because I'm not going to do that.
That's a can of worms. I know it.
That's a can of worms for sure. But if everyone would have been a gatekeeper of their own information, so if no one was going to publish any research publicly, this job would have been a hell of a lot more difficult for both sides. Oh, yeah. I'm not gonna lie, for both sides, for both blue and red. I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful to the community that published blog posts to content creators like you and IPSec and many, many, many others. It's awesome. It's awesome. But indeed, like you said, to understand what these blog posts are about, what these videos are about, it's going to take you some time. And that's perfectly fine. You have to keep in mind that no one, literally no one, not even the guys that wrote the operating system, did all that in a day or like a week or even a month. So you just got to keep that into account, that no one is perfect. And yeah, just study on and work for it. And if you keep being dedicated, if you keep giving back to the community as well, because I think that that's something we haven't touched upon yet. And that is, I said that the Infosec community is the most open community of all, but it's kind of a two-way street, right? We kind of expect people to give back as well. If you're just an info hoarder and you're not sharing any of your tactics or procedures or research, then how can we know that you're as good as you say you are? Like, one of the things that I had to do when I was leading a red team was hiring people, right? That's also something we have to do. And I was in charge of the technical side, so I interviewed a few people and I asked them some technical questions. And if you submit a resume for a red team gig, but you have no blog posts, you have no GitHub repositories, you have no community experience, you didn't attend any conferences, then it's hard for me to assess how good you really are without giving you like a box that you need to hack or something like that. And we try to avoid that, because in my experience, or in my opinion, wow, my English, an interview shouldn't take you like a whole day, right? It shouldn't be like, hey, this is a network, try hack it. I mean, yes, I've seen companies that take that approach, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I feel like an interview should more be about, are you a fit to the company? Do you align with the company strategy? Is your mindset in the right place? Obviously, the technical side is also important, but as I said, if you have like no tooling, if you have no blog posts, if you have no conferences, then I'm forced to ask you tough questions, because I have to assess whether or not you're technically capable of doing the job, right? So I think it really helps if you're transparent, and if you publish something, even if it's a stupid tool that has already been published like 200 times. If you just write a simple PowerShell port scanner, which has been published like 200 million times already, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You did it. You learned how something works, because it's one thing to use a tool that someone else wrote, and it's another thing to try and recreate that. Because if you're trying to recreate something and trying to program something from scratch, you automatically inherently learn how internals work. Because if you don't know how it works, you won't be able to reproduce someone's work. So I think it's very important to, even though I always say don't reinvent the wheel, I think it's important to sometimes just do reinvent the wheel. Yeah. So you learn something new.
I think that is absolutely the correct standpoint in learning. And like, hey, you've still got the training wheels on and you're still just getting the wind underneath you. And I'm really, really glad you mentioned using like the port scanner tool as the example, because that's the exact same one that I had in my mind. Like, if you look at any book, if you look at any course, if you look at literally anything, the first thing like, oh, make a cheesy, cutesy port scanner. And I tend to laugh and scoff and haha, there's that thing again. But like, for real, if you make it, it's yours, and you put that out on GitHub, and that's how, hey, you can show your work and document what you're doing and what you're learning and your competency. It's funny to me, in probably a bad way, that like what I think I or others or many other people that have tried to give advice and said like, hey, look, if you want to get a job, the best way to get your foot in the door is to have a GitHub repository, have a website, have a portfolio, attend conferences, give talks, etc. All the things that will set you apart from others. And now it's sort of like the standard. Like you kind of have to do all those things to be a part of the cool kids club, right? Not a bad thing. Maybe it's cool. Maybe that's interesting. Our industry is growing in that way. I don't know. Can I pivot? Probably for our last thing to chat about before we start to wind this whole thing down, because I want to be cognizant of your time, my friend. But one of the things that I know you are most excited about and I'm most happy about for you is this whole sweet new Cobalt Strike opportunity.
Yeah.
What do you got kicking around in your mind? What gears are turning, if there are any yet, or is it way too soon? Is it way too early to think?
No, the first thing, and so when Joe approached me,
Yeah.
I didn't answer straight away. One, because I was in shock,
Yeah.
and secondly, after I kind of calmed down a little, I was like, okay, there are a few things to consider here. First of all, I'm not that seasoned yet. I'm not a veteran yet. How is it going to look from an outside perspective? Because, well, Cobalt Strike is first of all, it's not free. It's paid.
Yeah.
So we do have a lot of clients. How is it going to look that like a 28-year-old guy is like technical director of Cobalt Strike? How is that going to look to the outside? But then I was like, that's actually like the most stupid way of looking at things, because it shouldn't matter what the outside thinks. If HelpSystems thinks that I'm capable of doing the job, if Joe Vest thinks that I'm capable of doing the job, then I'm probably going to be capable of doing that job. I do struggle with imposter syndrome a lot, but it's as you said, and this is definitely not to toot my own horn, because I'm definitely not someone that thinks of himself as an expert in anything, to be honest. But if you just look at the career path that I've been through already, which is kind of insane, in a short amount of time, leading red teams, becoming a SANS instructor, like writing a course for SANS, which is also like one of the world's most dominating thing out there, like academy out there, and their instructors are really legends in their fields. So it's hard to like manage expectations a little bit. I'm afraid. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a bit afraid, but I think that's good. Healthy stress is definitely good, because you know that something challenging is coming, and sometimes you have to push on. And the only way I grow personally, but everyone is different, but the way I grow personally is a lot like you, because I remember when you were talking about the OSED cert that you took, you also said that, yeah, I'm not really, this is not my forte. I'm not really comfortable with all this, but I just went that extra mile. I stepped out of my comfort zone. I tackled it and I succeeded, because you did finish that OSET. You were one of the first OSCE 3 kind of people out there. But this is much of the same thing. It's going to force me out of my comfort zone, but I think it's going to work out, because I'm a person that really almost lives for my job. It's a bit weird to say, but it's kind of true. And it's going to force me to learn more about low-level internals, which is something that I've always been interested in. But because if you're a consultant and you're always billable, it's not always easy to really dig deep and to start learning more about the internals, because you're kind of expected to perform. There's an objective that you have to reach. So if you have extra time during an engagement, you could spend that doing some extra research. But most of the time, that's not really the case, right? Because it's kind of scoped in a segment that you're just barely having enough time to finish what you have to do for a client. Otherwise, you're getting overpaid, and that's not something you want to do with a client of yours. So it's been a bit difficult to do the research. I did a lot of research in my own time. But yeah, now I get to do it paid. So that's awesome. I'm getting paid to do research, which is like the best thing ever. And I'm still going to try and do right, because I'm still going to work a little bit for TrustedSec as well from a freelance perspective. So I'm going to be combining HelpSystems with TrustedSec with SANS. So I'll basically be juggling 3 jobs. But it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a nice ride, because it will complement each other. Because my experience with TrustedSec is going to give me ideas to incorporate into Cobalt Strike. The things that I do with Cobalt Strike are going to make the life easier of the consultants at TrustedSec. And all that knowledge is going to help me deliver better quality in my course. So it's basically a triple threat, but it's all complementary to each other. It's not a separate thing. It kind of intertwines with each other, which is awesome. And yeah, that's kind of the gears that I've been grinding, man. It's scary, but it's scary in a good way. And I don't really care about what other people think anymore. If people like me, that's awesome. If people don't like me, that's awesome as well. I mean, you can't be loved by 100% of the people, right? You're always going to have some conflicts in character, and you're always going to have people that are like, "Ha, this guy's way too young to be a technical director." It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, if that's you, then sorry, man. I mean,
sorry, man. I am. So
yeah, that's about it. But yeah, they give me time to do what I love, and I already brainstormed with the team at Cobalt Strike a little bit. And turns out that the majority of the ideas that I had like on top of my mind are already kind of in the pipeline of Cobalt Strike already. So it's really nice to see that we're already kind of aligned and on the same page even before I start officially working for them. So that gives me a nice confident feeling as well, because I know that I'm going to be surrounded by very smart people, and I'm going to love it.
Oh man, I can't wait. I'm excited for you. Like,
thank you.
This has been awesome, John. This has been like such a cool conversation of like, hey, grit and tenacity, and like, look, tough love. I think is probably the thing that I want to land on this thing with, is that you're doing incredible stuff. You're weaving a whole lot of things. You're juggling a ton of stuff, but it's all for the right reasons, and that's what I think we're all trying to do. So yeah, awesome insight, awesome valued knowledge, and a little bit of motivation in there. So this has been stellar. So thank you for making some time to chat and hang out.
Hey, you're very much welcome, and thank you for having me. And maybe we can follow this up down the line with some cool demos. Who knows?
I'd love to. Hey, my bread and butter, what I hope I can offer, right, is like these cool, great conversations to give some people some insight into other fantastic folks doing great stuff in the scene. But then if you can, hey, light off any fireworks, do some cool magic tricks, do some show and tell with, let's drop our C2 framework. Let's do some like name pipe shenanigans. Anything here and there that would be awesome to shine the spotlight on.
Keep an eye on OneDrive and Teams. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Oh, yeah?
Everything living in app data is a target. Ooh.
These are the great conversations we'll have to have next.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. We'll top the recording and we'll tune out, but I hope everyone listening in really, really, really enjoyed this one. I know I did. So thanks again, John.